Fascinating stuff. Let's learn more about this. Warwick Holmes is an Australian avionics engineer who has spent many years helping to build the Rosetta spacecraft, all involved in this project. He joins me now. Warwick, thanks so much for coming on in.
Hello, Scott.
Clarify for us, tell us, we've got the Rosetta and we've got the Philae. We keep hearing these two terms. How do they all come together?
Rosetta is the orbiter spacecraft. It weighs about 3 tonnes, and it's like the mothership that carried Philae, which is the lander module that went down onto the surface about 7 months ago. And so the Philae only weighs about 100 kilograms, so it's much, much smaller than the mothership Rosetta.
That feat of Philae landing on a comet, how do you do that?
It was very difficult. Well, it was particularly difficult because the comet is so small. It has very little gravity, about 100,000th of the g-force of Earth. There's no atmosphere that we can use for slowing down. So we actually ejected Philae from 22 kilometres above the comet, and it took 7 hours to drift down at about 1 metre per second to hit the surface. The problem was that the mechanisms we had for landing didn't fire, and it bounced, but it did eventually come down.
That must have been 7 long hours.
It was.
Okay, now we've got this new landmark that has been achieved. Why is this such a big deal, and what could it well open?
Well, the situation today is that we're at the closest point to the Sun that the comet gets in its trajectory around the solar system. And this is where the comet is most active. This is where we see a traditional tail of a comet. And so there are 2 phases to the mission. There was the science that we did at the cold phase of the comet when we first got there and first landed, and this is the hot phase. This effectively is halfway through the mission, and we now follow the comet back out again. But this is a very important point in the milestone of the whole mission to get at this point closest to the Sun.
What can be learned from this?
Well, the main reason we're interested in going to a comet is that they were made before the Sun and the planets were formed in our solar system. So they're like a time capsule that holds the chemistry at the very, very beginning of our solar system, 4.6 billion years ago. And there's a very popular theory that the water on the Earth was carried by comets to the Earth 1.3 billion years after the Earth first formed. And not only did it bring the water, but it brought some very exotic carbon chemistry, organic chemistry, which we actually think kick-started life on Earth very quickly.
So this could well give us some clues as to how life on Earth evolved.
Absolutely. This is our main reason for going to a comet. All the planetary bodies in the solar system, nothing has quite the exotic carbon chemistry and organic chemistry that comets have.
Wow. Clearly this is an international operation that has taken many years with an Australian connection. Tell us about the Australian connection to this.
Well, in fact, the mission is entirely done by the European Space Agency, and I was lucky to be working over in Europe for, in fact, 29 years is the total time I've been away. But my connection with the European Space Agency was because through industry, working with different companies in Europe, and then I have my father is British, so I actually have a British passport as well. So that's actually the only reason, as an Australian, that I could work for ESA. But they were happy to take anybody who has a European passport, so long as you can do the work. So.
What's it been like, this journey for you?
Well, it's an incredible story, Scott. I mean, just the fact that I couldn't believe that I was actually holding something that actually now is on the surface of a comet. It took 11 years to get there, but it's amazing to do that kind of work and just see that the amazing scientific results that we're now getting.
When we're talking about a project that is years in the making with no firm destination as such or assurance as an outcome, how do you stay motivated in a job like this?
Well, from the very beginning, it was 25 years ago, the very first meetings to discuss the formation of the Rosetta project. It was 4.5 years that I worked on it, 8,000 hours in a clean room doing the testing in the building, and then the launch down at French Guiana. As I said on one of the interviews with the radio recently, was that at the time you don't really believe that it's actually going to one day be sitting on a comet, which I sort of slightly regret now because I would have worshipped this box every day. But it was 11 years to get there, and it was certainly worth the wait. And the science and the results we're getting now are just spectacular.
It might be very spectacular. There is some possibility the comet could well break up.
Yes, well, this is one of the unexpected surprises which we might have, and that is that the comet they've confirmed now it's actually 2 small comets which have joined together about 4.6 billion years ago. And we've photographed a 300-metre crack in the neck of the comet. Now, this process of comets breaking up is actually fairly common. About 25, 30 years ago, there was a comet called Schumacher-Levy that broke up into 22 pieces as it hit Jupiter. So comets are very fragile, they're very friable, very delicate bodies, very low density. This comet would actually float on water. 50% of it would be above the water.
Goodness.
So it's likely it could break up. It's been past the Sun 8 times before, and it hasn't broken up yet, so if we're lucky it won't do it this time, or if maybe we're lucky it will do it this time. We'll get some extra.
Either way, you get extraordinary data.
We're going to get extraordinary data no matter what happens.
Now, when a layman like me looks up into the sky, it makes you feel insignificant, but a speck in time. When you're working on something so momentous that might hold keys to the very evolution of life on Earth as we know it, does that empower you in some ways that I don't get, or are you even more hit with a sense of insignificance when you work in an area like
No,
this?
Scott, again, no, insignificance, that definitely is the word, because you're a part of a very large team. I mean, there's been more than 2,000 people that were involved on the Rosetta project from the very beginning to the very end. I was very lucky in that I was in a much smaller team of about 40 people that actually did the building and then the launch. But when you see these scientific results, I mean, it's just too incredible for words. I mean, I'm still trying to get my head around the significance of the chemistry that they're finding and just the nature of the comet and the fact that it's so active, it's such a strange shape. There's so many unusual findings that they've made so far, and this is only halfway through the mission. By the time the mission's finished and they start publishing the papers, I won't know what to do. It would be just too exciting to try to absorb all the significance of what's been found.
Well, it might be years away, Warwick Holmes, but you'll have to come back in and talk with us a bit more about it.
Thank you, Scott.
It's been a pleasure talking with you. Thanks so much for sharing your insights and your knowledge.